I never believed in Jesus. As a proud Jew, the idea was unthinkable until the night I died. A car crash took my life, but what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew. I left my body, entered a realm beyond time, and asked the unthinkable, was Jesus your son? The answer I received changed me forever. This is my story, a Jewish skeptic's journey from death to discovering the undeniable truth about the Messiah. My name is Daniel Weiss, and if you had told me a year ago that I would be writing this, I would have laughed in your face. I was raised in a proud Jewish household, steeped in tradition but not particularly religious. Like many American Jews, we observed the high holidays, lit the Hanukkah candles, and had a Passover Seder every spring. But beyond that, faith was more of a cultural identity than a personal conviction. I grew up in New York City, the grandson of Holocaust survivors who instilled in me a fierce sense of Jewish identity. My father was a respected cardiologist, and my mother was a professor of Jewish history. They always emphasized education, success, and perseverance. From an early age, I was expected to excel, and I did. I graduated from an Ivy League university, became a high-powered attorney, and built the kind of life most people dream about. A penthouse apartment, a luxury car, invitations to exclusive events. By every outward measure, I was successful. But beneath the surface, something was missing. Despite my achievements, there was a deep void inside me, an emptiness I couldn't explain. I had a beautiful wife, 2 children in private school, and all the trappings of success. Yet I often found myself awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, is this all there is? I distracted myself with work, travel, and material things, but no matter how much I accumulated, the emptiness never went away. I wouldn't have admitted it to anyone, but I felt lost. It was around this time that something unexpected and deeply unsettling happened. My younger sister, Rachel, announced that she had become a Christian. Rachel had always been the free spirit of our family. While I followed the expected path of academia and professionalism, Rachel was an artist who spent time traveling and searching for deeper meaning in life. But I never expected her to abandon Judaism, not for Christianity, of all things. She came over one evening, glowing with excitement, and told me she had found the truth in Jesus. I nearly choked on my drink. "Are you serious?" I asked, half laughing, half panicked. "Rachel, we're Jewish. Jews don't believe in Jesus." "I know that's what we've always been told," she said gently, "but have you ever actually looked into it? Have you ever read Isaiah 53? I scoffed. "Rachel, don't do this. You're embarrassing yourself." But she didn't argue. She just smiled and said, "I love you, Danny, but one day, I think you're going to see what I see." Her words haunted me. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about her face, the peace in her eyes, the certainty in her voice. I dismissed it, convinced she had been brainwashed, but something about her conviction unsettled me. Part of me wanted to prove her wrong, but another part of me was afraid. Afraid that, deep down, I might find out she was right. It happened on a cold November night, the kind where the city lights blurred in the mist and the streets were slick with rain. I had just finished a grueling 16-hour day at the law firm and was driving home, exhausted and distracted. My phone buzzed with a text from a client. Nothing urgent, but in my world, every message felt like life or death. I glanced at the screen for 1 second. That was all it took. A truck barreled through a red light from the opposite direction. The headlights filled my vision, bright, blinding, swallowing everything. I slammed the brakes, but it was too late. The impact was violent. A sound like an explosion. The force threw my body forward. My chest crushed against the seatbelt. My skull snapped back against the headrest. And then, everything went silent. I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in my car anymore. I was above it. I could see my own body slumped against the deflated airbag. Blood trickled from my forehead. My hands hung limp at my sides. The windshield was a shattered web of glass. I felt no pain, no fear, just an eerie calmness, as though I were floating in a dream. Below me, sirens wailed in the distance. A bystander pulled out a phone and screamed for help. I could hear the frantic voices, see the flashing red and blue lights slicing through the rain. This can't be happening. I tried to move, but there was nothing to move. I had no body, no weight, no substance. I was pure awareness, untethered, watching everything unfold as if it were happening to someone else. And then the light appeared. At first, it was just a glow on the edge of my vision, warm and golden. It pulsed and expanded, brighter than the sun yet strangely soothing. It wasn't just light, it was presence. A force so overwhelming it made my soul tremble. I felt drawn toward it, as if an invisible tide were pulling me in. The closer I got, the more I felt something I had never truly known before. Perfect love. Perfect peace. For a moment, I wanted to let go, to surrender. Then the darkness came. A shadow slithered at the edges of the light, twisting, shifting. A presence so foreign, so wrong, it sent a wave of dread through me. It whispered, not in words, but in thoughts that invaded my mind. You don't belong here. You are unworthy. Your life was a waste. Terror seized me. I wanted to pull away, but I was paralyzed. My soul felt exposed, stripped bare before something far greater than me. Every lie I had told, every selfish decision, every cold-hearted act, I saw them all at once, played back like a cruel, undeniable record. The weight of it was crushing. I had spent my whole life chasing power, success, recognition, but now, in this moment, none of it mattered. I was standing on the edge of eternity, and I had nothing. And then, from deep within me, a question surfaced, one I had never dared to ask before. God, are you real? The light pulsed, alive, as if responding. And without thinking, without knowing why, I asked the question that would change everything. Was Jesus your son? The moment the words left me, the entire realm shifted. The golden light expanded, swallowing the shadows, pushing back the darkness. A force, pure, undeniable authority, rushed over me. It wasn't just something I saw. I felt it. I knew it. Then, I heard the voice. Not with my ears, but with my entire being. A voice like thunder and water and fire all at once. I am. The words were alive, powerful, and undeniable. They didn't just enter my mind. They etched themselves onto my soul. At that moment, I knew the truth. Jesus was not just a man. He was not just a teacher. He was the Messiah, the one I had spent my whole life rejecting. Tears burned in my eyes, not from sadness, but from realization. I had spent decades ignoring the truth, pushing it away. But here, in this place, standing before the presence of God himself, there was no room for doubt. It was real. He was real. And I had been so wrong. Suddenly, I felt a violent pull, like a rubber band snapping back. The light receded, and I was falling, plunging downward, back into the world I had left behind. My eyes shot open. I gasped, choking on air. The paramedics were hovering over me, pressing a mask to my face, shouting something I couldn't understand. My chest ached, my body felt heavy, but my soul had changed. I wasn't the same man who had gotten into that car. I had seen the truth. And now, I could never go back. For a moment, I lay there, breathless, trapped between two worlds. The sirens, the paramedics, the distant hum of the city. They were all fading, dissolving into something greater. The warmth of the golden light enveloped me once more, pulling me upward, lifting me beyond time, beyond space. I was not in my body anymore. I wasn't even in this world. I found myself standing in a place that words could barely describe. It wasn't Earth, yet it felt more real than anything I had ever known. The sky was not a sky, but a vast expanse of light and color. Gold, blue, white, hues that pulsed as if alive. A deep sense of peace and holiness filled the air, yet I felt completely exposed, as if every part of me, my thoughts, my past, my soul, was laid bare. I wasn't alone. A figure stood before me, clothed in light. He wasn't like any man I had ever seen. He radiated power, wisdom, and authority. His eyes burned with an unearthly fire, yet they weren't frightening. They were filled with something deeper than love, something that pierced through me, seeing me as I truly was. I tried to speak, but my voice failed. Then, without thinking, the words rose from the depths of my soul. Was Jesus your son? The moment the question left my lips, the entire realm shifted. The light expanded, and suddenly, I was no longer standing before the figure. I was falling into my past. I was back in my childhood home, sitting at the dinner table with my parents and sister. I was 8 years old, my hands sticky with grape juice from the kiddush cup we had just passed around. Daniel, my mother said, what do we say after the Shema? Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, I answered proudly. The Lord is our God, the Lord is one. She smiled. My father patted my head. It was a moment of warmth, of family, of Jewish tradition. Then, the scene shifted. I was a teenager now, sitting in Hebrew school, listening to our rabbi teach about the Messiah. "The Messiah is yet to come," he said firmly. "He will bring peace, restore Israel, and rule as king." I watched as my younger self nodded, accepting every word without question. Jesus was for the Christians. That was what I had been taught. That was what I had always believed. The vision changed again. I was in my office, arguing with Rachel. "Have you ever read Isaiah 53? She asked, her eyes pleading. "Rachel, enough." I snapped. "I don't need to read your Christian Bible. Jesus is not for us." I saw the hurt in her face. I had dismissed her so easily, so coldly. And then a new vision came. I saw a man, kneeling on the ground, beaten, bloodied, trembling. His face was covered in sweat and dust, his back torn open with deep, raw wounds. Soldiers surrounded him, their laughter sharp and cruel as they pressed a crown of thorns onto his head. Blood ran down his face. Jesus. But he wasn't just a man. He looked at me. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with pain, but also love. Love beyond comprehension, love that reached for me even as I had spent my life rejecting him. Then, the vision changed again. I saw a cross. Jesus hung there, his arms outstretched, his body heaving with every agonizing breath. The sky above him was black, the earth trembling. People mocked him, spat at him, but he did not curse them. Instead, he spoke, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The words hit me like a tidal wave. Tears streamed down my face. My body shook. I knew that I was one of them. I was one of those who had mocked him. I had rejected him my entire life. I had closed my heart, refused to listen, dismissed the truth. And yet, he had loved me anyway. I felt something in my chest crack open. The weight of my pride, my resistance, my blindness, it all shattered. I couldn't stop the sob that tore from my throat. I didn't know. I didn't know it was you. The vision faded, and I was back in the realm of light. A thunderous voice filled the air, a voice so powerful, so absolute, that it wasn't just sound, it was existence itself. "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." The words shook me to my core. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed, undone. I couldn't deny it anymore. Jesus was not just a prophet. He was not just a teacher. He was the Messiah, the one my ancestors had been waiting for, the one I had spent my whole life rejecting. And yet, he had never rejected me. I covered my face, trembling. "God, what do I do?" The voice responded, but this time, it wasn't thunder. It was a whisper, gentle yet firm. "Follow my son, and you will find life." At that moment, I knew my life would never be the same again. The golden light swirled around me, embracing me in a warmth that penetrated my very soul. And then, I was falling again, falling back toward my body, back to the world. But I was no longer the same man who had left it. I knew the truth now, and nothing would ever be the same again. I felt myself falling, plummeting back into the world I had left behind. The golden light faded, the overwhelming presence of God receded, and in its place came a rushing, suffocating darkness. Then pain. My chest ached as if a heavy weight had been dropped on it. My head throbbed. My lungs burned as I gasped for air. "We've got a pulse." Voices, urgent and frantic, buzzed around me. "Daniel, can you hear me?" I blinked, my vision blurry. Harsh fluorescent lights burned overhead. The metallic scent of antiseptic filled my nostrils. A paramedic loomed over me, pressing fingers against my wrist, checking my vitals. Another one squeezed a breathing mask over my face. I was alive, but something was different. I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through my ribs, and a nurse gently pushed me back. I was in a hospital room. Machines beeped softly around me. A dull ache spread through my body, reminding me that I had just survived something I shouldn't have. My mother sat beside the bed, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw me stir, she let out a choked sob and grabbed my hand. "Oh, Daniel, thank God." We thought. Her voice broke. I squeezed her hand weakly, but my mind wasn't fully here. I had just seen something beyond this world. Or had I? Had it all been a hallucination? A dying brain's desperate attempt to make sense of the void? No. It had been real. I could still feel it. The warmth of the light, the power of the voice, the overwhelming truth that had shattered everything I once believed. A doctor entered the room, checking my vitals and explaining how lucky I was. "You coded for over 2 minutes," he said. "We thought we lost you. It's a miracle you're still here." A miracle. I had seen miracles. But how could I explain it? How could I tell my Jewish mother, who had taught me to say the Shema before bed every night, who had wept with joy at my bar mitzvah, that I had just encountered Jesus? How could I tell my father, who had spent his life defending the Jewish faith, that I had stood in the presence of God and asked, "Was Jesus your son?" And that the answer had shaken me to my core? The weight of it pressed down on me. I had mocked Rachel for believing in Jesus. I had dismissed her words, told her she was brainwashed. But now, I was just like her. Was it just a dream? I needed to understand. I needed proof. Over the next few days in the hospital, I barely spoke. My family assumed I was in shock, still recovering from the accident. But inside, I was wrestling with something far greater than my injuries. Was it real, God? I whispered one night, staring at the ceiling. Did I really see you? Or was it just my mind playing tricks on me? No answer came. No thundering voice. No golden light. But deep in my soul, I already knew the truth. I could not deny what I had seen. The visions. The suffering Messiah. The overwhelming love and authority in that voice that had spoken, "This is my son." I had spent my life ignoring the possibility. Now, I had seen it with my own eyes. And yet, how could I ever tell anyone? Would they think I had lost my mind? Would they call me a traitor to my people? Would they stop seeing me as Jewish? On the third day, Rachel came to visit. She walked into my hospital room cautiously, holding a bouquet of flowers, her expression filled with relief. "Danny," she breathed, "I've been praying for you." Tears stung my eyes. I looked at her, my baby sister, the one I had laughed at, dismissed, mocked. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Finally, I managed to whisper, "Rachel." I saw him. Her eyes widened. She knew. I didn't have to say anything else. She took my hand, her own trembling, and whispered, "I know, Danny, I know." At that moment, the fear inside me cracked. For the first time since returning to this world, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I had seen the truth, and no matter the cost, I could never go back. The weight of what I had seen pressed down on me in the days after my hospital discharge. The city bustled outside my apartment window, life moving forward as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, at least for me. I had been in the presence of God. I had asked, "Was Jesus your son?" And I had received an answer that shattered everything I thought I knew. Yet, a war raged inside me. I was still Jewish. I had been raised to believe that faith in Jesus was for them, the Gentiles, the outsiders, the ones who had persecuted us for centuries. How could I reconcile this? I knew I couldn't keep this to myself forever. So one evening, sitting across from my father at his dining table, I decided to tell him. He listened in silence, his sharp eyes studying me as I spoke, about the accident, about the light, about the visions and the voice that had spoken to me. When I finished, his face darkened. "Daniel," he said finally, his voice low but firm, "you were unconscious. This was a dream, nothing more." "It wasn't a dream, Dad." My voice trembled. "It was real. I saw him. I saw Jesus." His expression hardened. "Enough." I swallowed. "I need to understand this, Dad. I need to know why God, our God, showed me this." He pushed back his chair, shaking his head. "You want answers? Then speak to Rabbi Cohen. He'll explain it to you." The next day, I went to see Rabbi Cohen, the man who had taught me Torah as a child. I told him everything. He listened patiently, nodding, his face unreadable. Then, he sighed. "Daniel," he said carefully, "you've been through trauma. Your brain is looking for meaning where there is none. This is a deception. Perhaps even the work of the adversary." "The adversary?" I scoffed. "Rabbi, I asked God directly if Jesus was his son, and he answered me." He gave me a sad look, the way a father might look at a child who had lost his way. "You are Jewish, Daniel, and Jews do not believe in Jesus." I clenched my fists. Then why does the Tanakh describe him? That night, I opened the Hebrew scriptures, desperate for something, anything that could confirm or deny what I had experienced. I flipped through the familiar pages, my heart pounding. Then, I landed on Isaiah 53. I had read it before, but this time, it was different. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. He was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. My breath caught, pierced, crushed, wounded for us. It was describing Jesus. Tears blurred my vision. I had spent my entire life ignoring the truth that had been there all along. I closed my eyes and whispered, God, I need to know. If this is true, if Jesus is really the Messiah, show me again. Silence. But deep inside me, I already knew. He had already shown me. I sat in my apartment, the pages of Isaiah 53 still open before me, my heart pounding. I had spent my entire life resisting this moment. I had mocked, denied, and dismissed the idea that Jesus could be the Messiah. But now, after seeing him, after hearing the voice of God, and after finding him in the very scriptures I had trusted my whole life, I couldn't fight it anymore. I dropped to my knees, tears slipping down my face. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I whispered, I believe. I believe that Jesus is your son, that he is my Messiah. At that moment, a peace unlike anything I had ever known flooded over me. It was as if the weight of an entire lifetime had been lifted. For the first time, I felt whole. For the first time, I knew God. I knew what this meant. My family would reject me. My father would grieve. My community might never accept me again. But I couldn't stay silent. I had to tell them. I had to tell everyone. Because if Jesus was truly the Messiah, and I now knew that he was, then everyone needed to know the truth. If you are reading this and wondering, if you have questions you've been too afraid to ask, if you have ever felt the void in your soul, the emptiness you can't explain, ask God yourself. I did, and his answer changed my life forever.